Welcome in this new video. Today, we're going to talk about visual attention. Then I will explain a little bit about the theory, and then Priya will explain the applicability of visual attention from the robotics side. So we are talking about robots, and nowadays we think that robots should live with us. But how? In an unconstrained world and dynamic world. But we also put constraints. This means that we want the robot to move in a dynamic environment with low latency and low power consumption. How can we do this? So if we think about it just for a second, someone has already done it for us. If you think about an animal that is interacting with the scene, or an animal that is escaping from predators, or another animal that is doing visual search for foraging food. So in this case, we immediately understand that nature, throughout evolution, has already solved lots of problems for us. So if we think about a robot interacting with the environment, the first thing that you think is vision, right? We need to have vision, or to give the robot the ability to see what's in front of it. In order for the robot to be attentive to what's going on, then you need to somehow define visual attention. But what really visual attention means? So let's have a look at this video.
You are about to take part in a quick experiment. Take a look at this. Okay, now, did you happen to notice anything odd? Watch again. See any changes? Don't worry if you didn't see that it's two different men. It means your brain is doing exactly what it should be. It's focusing on the meaning of the scene rather than on the irrelevant details.
So exactly as we saw in the video, what we do as humans is that we put attention in the most informative part of the scene. And then we try to understand what's happening rather than understanding every part of the scene and rather than recognizing each part of the scene. So informative is the key word here. Let's have a look at Yarbus' experiments from 1967. Yarbus was a psychologist, and he worked and did lots of experiments on subjects. And he asked them to look at different images. These different images like the ones that you are looking at it now, right? So you have images of people in a room, images of the face of a young lady, and images of a forest where there is a bear. So on the left, you see the image, and on the right, you see the eyes recording that Yarbus recorded from human subjects looking at the scene. So you can clearly see that the scan path, which is the recording of the eye's trajectory movements, differ a lot from these images. And then you can see that, for example, in the image where you have different faces, different people in the room, you can see that the scan path or the fixations are going from one face to another one because we are trying to understand what's happening. For example, in the one where you have the face, we are triangulating because we are trying to understand if we know that person. Instead, in the image where we have the forest and the bear, we really don't put so much attention on the foliage, rather to the bear, because we need to run. So again here, the key idea and what came out from the experiments of Yarbus is that we put attention where there is information. But then, how do we understand what are these salient areas where we put attention? And especially, what is a saliency map? So we saw before that Yarbus was showing these images to different subjects. And then we have the scan path, which is the trajectories of the eyes moving over the image Then we have a saliency map. The saliency map is the concretization of the scan path. Then is where we focused our attention. Then the saliency map is telling us what was really salient in the scene for us. So in the course of time, lots of researchers tried to mimic attention, mimic the visual attention with different models. We have one of the most popular one, which is Haiti, Koch, and Niebuhr from 1998. And then today, what we present is the proto-object model, coming out from Russell and Ralph Etienne Cummins from Johns Hopkins University et al. And this study comes from 2014 and is a bio-inspired visual attention saliency-based model. Now we have all of the possibilities to understand all of the words of this work. So what's proto-object? Proto-object takes inspiration from the border ownership cells. The border ownership cells are cells that we have in the secondary visual cortex in V2. These cells have been found in 2000 from Zhu et al. And these cells, basically, if you can see in the image that is shown, they are on the edges of the foreground. We have background and foreground. And then they are on the edges on the foreground. And as you can see in A and C, you can see that the cell is responding only when the foreground is one side only of the neuron receptive fields of this cell. So this means that somehow they can tell you the ownership of that edge, if that edge is owned by the foreground or it's just background. So we can imagine to take a curved shape filter, and this filter is called von Mises filter. It's a banana shape. You can call it as you want, half moon shaped. But the idea is to take this filter of different orientations and then pull the information together from the different orientations. What does it happen? It happens that what you will do is that you will detect objects or areas that potentially can have an object inside. That's why proto-object is an object to be, right? So what we do here is a detection of possible areas that contains objects of different scales and of different shapes. And now I leave the stage to Priya, which will tell you how we used the proto-object model on a real robotic platforms.
Hi everyone, today I want to discuss a neuromorphic pipeline for visual object detection using saliency-based attention in Lava. I want to build up from what Julia just explained about visual attention, bringing the focus on bio-inspired models of visual attention. So the two keywords to get familiarized here before proceeding to the long-term objective of this topic are robotics and neuromorphic computation. So from watching C-3PO, WALL-E, R2-D2, we have turned science fiction into reality with robots like Sophia, Ameka, and Boston Dynamics robot Spot. So the objective of the robotics field is to create intelligent missions that can assist humans in their daily lives. We understand that robots can increase the productivity and decrease the downtime, but we still lack power efficiency and the latency when handling large computation. So bio-inspiration and the concept of neuromorphic could be used here to solve the issue, aiming for a low power and a low latency application. So due to its much better energy efficiency working with sparse representation like spikes and parallel computing from population coding, it's an alternative over conventional architecture and energy-hungry GPUs. In this project, we leverage neuromorphic computing to create a spiking neural network for visual attention for plug insertion into a socket board by a robot. So this task can be broadly split into different questions like where to insert the socket, which plug to insert, and how to insert. Our test case here is that we have a socket board and say we want to insert a plug into it, for example, an Ethernet cable. So this is represented by the first point in our pipeline where you can see a 3D printed socket board. Here we have the 3D printed socket board with 4 different sockets. It's like an ideal case for this application. So with the socket board, what do we want to do? We want to visually scan the scene easily. We want to find what's in front of the robot. The most important task then is making the robot able to see the environment. For this, we attach an event-based camera on the robotic arm. Neuromorphic vision sensors, or the event-based camera, are a family of sensors that measure change in pixel intensity over time and encode the information as asynchronous events rather than a regular video frame. Here, we use DV innovation micro. Events are represented as x, y, p, t, where x and y are the pixel coordinates, p is the polarity, and t is the time step. With this setup, we generate events, which looks like this. Now we have our stream of events. We can proceed with the next step in the pipeline. So let's now start talking about the network implementation. Before knowing where the socket is, we need to know from the vast data which regions are important. So for this, we use the concept of proto-object saliency. So we take a large inspiration from the research work of Julia. She explained about this previously in the video, where she adapted the proto-object model to run on another neuromorphic platform called Spinnaker. After the events are collected, these events are convolved with a curved filter, as shown over here, which has activation in the active part and inhibition in the background of the filter. So we use 4 different orientation of this filter with its complementary part. The output of the convolution from a pair of a filter is given to a lift population which acts like an AND gate, and this output from the filter neuron for a particular pair of orientation is given to a proto-object neuron, which basically does the grouping of the response from different pairs of orientation to see if there is a closed contour. And doing this for different scales makes it robust for different size and shape, and hence we get the 4 sockets, as you can see over here, as the salient part of the image. Once we have the salient region, we want to focus our attention on one of the salient region, and this is done by the concept of dynamic neural field. So we use the dynamic neural field Lava repository developed by Intel to implement this. To briefly explain what dynamical neural field is, it's like a dynamical system with recurrent connection, which can be viewed as an attractor network trying to converge towards a stable fixed point. This neuronal model has following properties like selection, working memory, and detection. More information about these topics can be found in the book A Primer on Dynamic Field Theory by Gregor Schoen. Here, we use the property of selection to attend to one particular socket out of all the 4 sockets. So this is determined by the kernel width which we use. The output from this network is something like this. And as you can see over here, out of the 4 sockets, we have activation on one of the socket alone. With attention on one socket, we now want to get the region of interest. For this, we crop out the region of interest using customized connectivity matrices. Once we have the region of interest, we want to give it to a trained network to classify it into a socket type. If the output is the desired label, for example, since we started with Ethernet, let's say the output comes as an Ethernet, then the whole pipeline is successful. We have detected the Ethernet socket. But just in case, let's say the output is not the desired socket, it's a USB that we found. Now you want to repeat the whole pipeline till you get the Ethernet socket. So before repeating the pipeline, we want to inhibit our previously attended socket. For this, we use the concept of masking. So the output from this step masks the previously selected socket, as you can see over here. And now we use this new input for our pipeline and directly jump back to the step 3 of proto-object saliency. So just for fun, let's see what happens when we attend to this time. So we see here, previously we were attending to the USB socket, and now we are attending to the HDMI port. So this concludes the whole pipeline. The entire processing pipeline is done in the software platform called Lava, which is supported by Intel's Neuromorphic chip Loihi. Thank you for watching.
Yes, Thank you so much, and thanks for being part of this video. And if you want to know more about visual attention and proto-objects, please don't hesitate to contact us and Fortis. Thank you.